I was 10 when my mom died on a rainy two-lane outside Wheeling, West Virginia. That road was slick, visibility low, and the truck that hit her didn't slow down in time. I was at a friend's house that night, just one sleepover, and by the next morning, I had no home left. They said she died instantly. I didn't understand what that meant until I saw her closed casket and the way no one talked to me, just about me. The air smelled like old flowers and sugar cookies, but everything tasted like copper. At the funeral, people avoided eye contact like grief was contagious. The only adult who actually looked me in the eye was Olivia Watson, my mom's cousin's wife. She wore a deep blue dress and clutched a cheap tissue like it was holding her together. Her husband, Joseph, handled the rest. Slicked hair, dark suit, steady voice like a guy giving a sales pitch. He stood next to the casket and told everyone, "We'll handle arrangements. Everything's under control." I was standing near the pastries, trying not to cry where anyone could see me, when Nicole Campbell cornered him. She was in her late 50s, built like a linebacker in pearls, and had that way of speaking where you weren't sure if it was a suggestion or a threat. "Family takes care of family. It's the right thing," she told Joseph. She didn't raise her voice, didn't make a scene, but Joseph's face twitched when she said it, just a flicker near his jawline, like he knew arguing wasn't an option. He nodded, then glanced around to see who was watching. Reputation, not love, sealed the deal. Quick note. Before we go further, share in the comments what city or country you're watching from. And let's continue. Olivia didn't say much during that exchange, but I saw her eyes dart toward me, and then to Joseph, like she was doing math she didn't like. She had 2 kids already. She worked at the middle school front office. She ran a tight ship. And now she was about to drag in a stray with a trash bag full of clothes and a heart full of shock. They drove me back to their place in Ohio that same afternoon. I sat in the back seat with that trash bag in my lap, my coat zipped too high, trying not to cry. The road stretched for hours, and nobody talked much. Olivia stared out the window. Joseph kept one hand on the wheel and the other on his Bluetooth headset. Business didn't pause for grief. Their house was in a quiet suburb outside Columbus. Neat lawn, clean porch, one of those plastic welcome signs stuck in the flower bed. Their daughter Jessica was 14. She met me at the door and gave me a look like she was already over it. I remember her perfectly. Glossy ponytail, crossed arms, thick eyeliner like armor. "You're not touching my art stuff," she said before I even made it inside. Her brother Holden was 9. He popped out from behind the stairs, pointed to the hallway, and said, "Don't go in my room or I'll tell Dad." I didn't answer. I just moved toward the couch. Joseph walked me into the family room like he was showing a guest around a rental. "We'll figure things out. For now, this'll be your spot," he said, pointing to a pull-out couch tucked behind a folding screen. I stood there, trash bag still in hand. My throat burned. Jessica stomped off. Holden ran back upstairs. Joseph went to his home office and shut the door without looking back. Olivia stayed. She didn't say much, just pulled out the couch bed and shook out a clean blanket. She placed it down like it was a sacred offering and whispered, "You're safe here." I nodded like I believed her, because I needed to believe someone. That night, I lay in bed staring at that folding screen, beige with little vines painted on it. It looked like something from a hotel lobby, not a kid's room. I didn't cry, not out loud. I listened to Jessica laughing at something upstairs, Holden's video game bleeps, Joseph talking through a closed door, and Olivia walking from room to room, doing too much in total silence. The last thing I remember was her pausing by the stairs, like she wanted to say something else but didn't. She looked at me, pressed her lips together, and turned away. And I was still lying there, staring at that divider, when the house went dark and the quiet got so thick I felt it crawl up my spine. The folding screen didn't go anywhere for the first 6 months. Every night I curled up on that couch bed and tried not to shift too much, because the springs creaked loud enough to wake the whole house. I learned fast what was welcome and what wasn't. Joseph didn't like noise, didn't like mess, didn't like being surprised. Olivia called it structure, but it felt more like waiting to get scolded. From the outside, their house looked like something you'd see on a Christmas card. Trimmed hedges, little flag in the yard that changed with the seasons, a white porch swing nobody sat on, the kind of street where people smile too wide but still call the HOA if your recycling bin's crooked. I figured out real quick that any attention from neighbors was bad, so I kept my voice down and stayed invisible. Joseph had rules like he was running a team meeting. Speak when spoken to. Don't talk over adults. Don't complain about things you're lucky to have. And the biggest one, don't make this family look complicated. What that really meant was, don't remind anyone I was there. Olivia tried to smooth things out. She packed lunches, checked homework, and drove me to school like she was clocking hours on a job. But you could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she held her breath every time Joseph walked into the room. It was like she lived on the edge of something breaking. Jessica never missed a chance to remind me I didn't belong. She'd call me Charity with that syrupy fake sweetness, especially when adults were close enough to hear, but not enough to catch the meaning. "Charity, did you leave crumbs on the counter again?" she'd say, batting her lashes like she was asking a real question. Holden picked up on it fast. He was only a year younger than me, but he knew how to ride the power shift. He'd copy Jessica, then act all innocent when called out. He'd walk by my corner of the room and mutter, "You're not even real family," like it was just a fact. Olivia wanted me in their district school, but Jessica pitched a fit. Said she'd be humiliated if people knew we were related. Joseph took her side, told Olivia it was better for everyone if I went somewhere else. So I ended up bused to an older building across town. Different district, different lunch hours, different world. Nobody said it out loud, but I got the message. I didn't belong to their name. I was an extra. An accessory they couldn't quite hide, so they shoved me somewhere less visible. After a while, I started doing things around the house without being asked. Taking out the trash, raking the leaves, sweeping the garage. It wasn't about pride, it was survival. If I was useful, maybe they'd keep tolerating me. That's how I thought back then. Earn space. Don't complain. Stay useful. One Saturday afternoon, cold enough to see your breath, I was behind the grocery store looking for boxes to use for school projects when I spotted a beagle mix curled up behind the dumpsters. Skin and bones, ribs sticking out like fence posts. I didn't bring him home. I wasn't stupid. But I came back the next day with a sandwich I didn't eat from lunch. A week later, Olivia handed me a napkin-wrapped piece of chicken with a casual, "Oops, I made too much." She didn't look me in the eye when she said it, just kept stirring her coffee like nothing happened. Joseph noticed eventually. He saw the muddy shoes by the back door and snapped, "We're not running a zoo." Then he looked at me and added, "You've got a habit of collecting problems, don't you?" I wanted to say something, but I didn't. Nicole started coming by once a month, usually on Sundays after church. She wore heavy perfume and always brought some kind of dessert from the bakery. She'd pat my head like I was a well-behaved pet and say things like, "Be grateful, Neil. Don't give them reasons to regret this." She meant well, I guess. But every time she said it, my stomach twisted, because it reminded me I was a conditional guest, not a son. Nicole kept asking when Joseph and Olivia would make it permanent. She meant adoption, even if she never said the word. Joseph would smile with his mouth and not his eyes and say, "We're considering it." Olivia would go quiet and start cleaning something that didn't need cleaning. Nothing ever came of it. No papers, no promises. Just that folding screen, a couch bed, and the message, "Don't get comfortable." Then came the one thing I actually looked forward to. Saturday volunteer shifts at the County Nature Center. Olivia signed me up to keep me busy, but it became something more. That first week I met a girl named Ainsley Hart. She was my age, maybe a little older, brown hair in a loose braid, freckles on her nose. She didn't look at me like I was broken. She tossed me a pair of gloves and said, "Trash bags are over there. You work steady, I like that. That sentence stuck in my chest like a warm ember. Not because it was dramatic, because it was real. No pity, no hesitation. Just someone noticing effort and not treating it like a favor. I didn't say much back, just nodded and got to work. We picked up litter around the lake, hauled brush to the compost pile, and helped set up for a school group the next day. By the time Olivia came to pick me up, my shoes were muddy, my hands were scraped, and I was smiling without realizing it. On the ride home, Olivia glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "Good day?" I said. "Yeah." Then I looked out the window and added, "They said I work steady." She didn't say anything, but she smiled. That was the first time I started to think maybe I could build something outside the Watsons' house. Something steady, even if it wasn't love. Olivia's smile in the car lingered for a few weeks, then faded when Joseph came home one evening talking louder than usual. He tossed his keys on the counter, loosened his tie, and said he'd been promoted. Bigger territory, better title, more money. Then he said we were moving farther out, to a place that fit the position. The new house sat on a longer road, farther from town, with a finished basement and a porch swing that never moved. It looked calm, like something out of a brochure. Everybody got their own bedroom this time. When I stood in the doorway of mine, small but real, I let myself think maybe things would ease up now that nobody had to trip over each other. They didn't. Jessica and Holden just got better at shutting me out without being obvious. Politeness replaced open hostility, which somehow hurt more. Doors closed gently instead of slammed. Conversations stopped when I walked in, then picked back up once I left. Joseph started hosting cookouts for coworkers and people from church. He wore his weekend smile, the one that showed teeth but no warmth. I learned to disappear before anyone could ask who I was. I'd drift to the basement or slip out back, pretending I had homework or chores. When I did get caught in the open, Olivia would say, "This is Neil, he's with us," and then rush into something else like she didn't trust the label to hold. Nobody asked follow-up questions. Nobody ever does when the answer might be messy. Jessica became the golden kid without even trying. Joseph poured money and attention into her like it was an investment. Art camps, better clothes, a used sedan when she turned 16, which he announced at dinner like a prize reveal. Holden watched that and learned fast. He figured out Joseph responded to pressure, not need. So he'd sulk, pick fights, act wronged until somebody paid. Olivia usually caved because she hated conflict, and Joseph called it keeping the peace, while Holden learned how to pull strings. I hit a growth spurt that year. Shoulders filled out, voice dropped. I didn't have money for brand clothes or a haircut every few weeks, and Joseph started making comments like he was talking about a dent in the car. "You look rough," he said once, adjusting his cufflinks before work. "Unpolished. You need to clean that up." I stood there, half asleep, trying to understand how my body had turned into a problem. Olivia waited until Joseph left, then told me I looked fine. But I could tell defending me cost her. Joseph would go cold for days after that. Quiet dinners, one-word answers. The house felt like it was holding its breath, and I always felt like it was my fault. So I stayed out late whenever I could. Hiking trails, extra shifts at the nature center, weekend work stacking mulch for a landscaping crew, anything that made me feel useful without having to ask permission. Ainsley and I stayed loosely connected through volunteer days. We weren't close, not yet. Sometimes we'd talk by the trailhead while parents loaded cars and kids complained about mud. She had this calm way of asking questions that didn't feel like an interrogation. "You doing okay at home?" she asked once, tying a bag shut. I shrugged and said, "I stay busy." She nodded like that told her plenty. She didn't push. She never did. There was another thing happening then, something I didn't understand until years later. From the first months after my mom died, envelopes had been arriving in Joseph's name. Survivor benefits, part of a wrongful death settlement. The court had named him my temporary guardian, and the Social Security Administration later appointed him as the representative payee. The checks came to him, not me. He told me it was household money. Said that's how families work. I didn't argue because I didn't know I could. I didn't even know what the words meant back then. Representative payee sounded official, like a grown-up thing that had nothing to do with me. The benefits stopped when I turned 18. Whatever was left from the settlement had been folded into household costs long before that. Rent, food, utilities. All the things I never asked for, but was told I owed. One night, after Joseph made a comment about money being tight, I asked Olivia about it. We were clearing plates, the dishwasher humming too loud. "What about those checks?" I asked, keeping my voice low. She froze, just for a second. Then she gave me that trapped look, the one like she'd stepped into a room with no exits. "Joseph handles the finances," she said. "Dinner's getting cold." She changed the subject so fast it felt like whiplash. I didn't bring it up again. Looking back, that should have been the moment I understood. Joseph didn't push for guardianship because he loved me. He pushed for it because it looked right. Because control is easier when the papers say you're in charge. At the time, all I knew was that the bigger house didn't fix anything. It just spread the distance out. More rooms to hide in. More silence to fill. One evening after a long shift hauling brush at the nature center, I came home late and muddy. Joseph was in the kitchen, arms crossed. "You can't keep tracking dirt through this place," he said, looking me up and down. "People notice." I nodded, went to the sink, and started scrubbing my boots. He watched for a second, then walked away without another word. Later that night, I lay in my bed and stared at the ceiling fan turning slow. I listened to the house settle, to Jessica laughing on her phone, to Holden's music thumping through the wall, to Olivia moving quietly downstairs, cleaning something that didn't need cleaning. I pulled on a jacket, laced my boots, and slipped out the back door. The porch swing creaked when I brushed past it, but nobody came after me. I headed down the long road toward the trails, not looking back, and didn't slow down until the house was out of sight. The trail didn't solve anything, but it gave me space to breathe. That mattered more than I realized at the time. Back home, nothing changed. Joseph still came through the door like a man expecting applause. Only now he talked to me like I was an employee who didn't meet quota. Every conversation had that clipped edge, tight smile, straight back, eyes scanning for mistakes. "Don't drag your feet when I talk to you," he snapped once as I was heading to the garage. I looked up, half tempted to ask if he even remembered my birthday, but I didn't. I just said, "Yes, sir," and kept walking. That was our rhythm by then, him dishing out condescension, me swallowing it with just enough yeses to keep the peace. He pushed the be a man talk constantly, said I needed a job, said I needed to stop expecting help, said I was living under his roof by grace, like the roof itself was some holy favor he handed down from heaven. He said it in front of Olivia once, and I caught her flinch like he'd slapped the table. She tried to balance it all, overfunctioned in ways I didn't understand back then, woke up early to pack everyone's lunches, made breakfast even when no one asked, cleaned behind us like her worth depended on it. She'd apologized to Joseph for tension he caused, then apologized to me for things she couldn't fix. Jessica left the fall I turned 17, art program in Chicago. Joseph bragged about it like he'd won an award, kept saying, "She's going places," like he'd personally carried her across the threshold. Olivia cried that night, quietly, in the kitchen. I heard her over the soft clink of dishes. She didn't know I was still awake. Holden was deep into his entrepreneur phase, flipping sneakers, trying to build a following online, selling stuff out of his room and pretending it was a business. Joseph let it slide, probably because Holden knew how to flatter him when needed. I watched him work the angles, get what he wanted, then disappear until the next ask. I picked something different, enrolled in a community college program tied to park services and land stewardship. Not glamorous, but it made sense to me. Out in the woods, things were honest. Nobody was pretending. Nobody had a script. Olivia supported it, quietly. Joseph didn't even try to hide his disappointment. "Is that really the best you can aim for?" he said at dinner one night. "You're going to dig in dirt for a living?" "It's conservation work," I answered. He didn't look up from his plate. "Same thing." Olivia's fork paused in midair, then lowered without a bite. That's when I started staying away longer. Shifts at the nature center, helping with Saturday tours, extra hours hauling supplies or clearing storm damage, anything that kept me out of the house. Then came Thanksgiving. It had snowed early that year, thick, heavy stuff. I tracked in mud without realizing it, just a few steps across the entry rug. Joseph saw it and didn't even pause. "Is this how you thank us?" he barked, pointing down like I'd spit on the floor. "You come in here like you own the place?" Olivia stepped in, started cleaning it with a towel. "It's just dirt, Joseph," she said, calm but clipped. He rounded on her. "No, it's not just dirt. It's a pattern. You excuse everything he does because you feel guilty. You've ruined this family by playing favorites." That was it. Olivia straightened up, towel still in her hand, and said, "Enough. You don't get to call him a burden because he didn't come from you." Her voice didn't shake. Her face didn't soften. It wasn't loud, but it landed. Joseph froze, just stared at her like he didn't recognize the woman in front of him. Then his face went flat. I'd seen him annoyed, seen him angry, but this was different. This was checked out, like he'd flipped a switch and didn't care what lit up. He didn't argue, just left the room, left the house an hour later without saying goodbye. 2 weeks after that, Ainsley came back into my life. She was working seasonal programming at the Nature Center. We were restocking trail signs when she noticed I was walking funny. "Something happen?" she asked. I hesitated, then said, "Just rough sleep." She looked at me, steady and clear-eyed. "You don't have to earn basic respect, Neil." That line hit harder than it should have. I'd been trained to think respect was a reward, something you got if you stayed quiet and did your part, not something you deserved just for being human. Joseph came back before Christmas with a big announcement. Said he was starting over with someone named Sloan Mercer. Corporate world, lived in the city. "We're keeping it amicable," he told Olivia like he was describing a budget change. No fight, no emotion, just a man rerouting his life like it was a calendar update. Olivia stood in the kitchen with her arms crossed, lips pressed tight. She didn't ask questions. He didn't offer answers. He didn't move out, though. Not really. He disappeared more often. Trips, late meetings, company functions, but never made a clean break. For the next several years, he hovered between presence and absence, always keeping just enough skin in the game to avoid being called absent. Olivia stopped trying to explain it to people. Holden acted like nothing changed. Jessica barely came home at all. I just kept working, kept showing up to the trails, kept learning what steady looked like, even if home was anything but. And somewhere in all that half-absence, I realized the provider had already left. He just hadn't packed his bags yet. Joseph didn't slam the door when he left. He didn't even say goodbye. One day in early March, I came home from the county trail site, and the garage was half empty, storage bins gone, some of his golf stuff missing, and Olivia's favorite kitchen knives left behind like a parting insult. There was a copy of a lease agreement on the counter with Sloan Mercer's name on it. Downtown condo, clean, sterile address. Olivia stared at that lease for almost an hour. She didn't speak. She just sat at the table with a pen in her hand and a dish towel folded over her knee, like she was waiting to be asked for something. Then she got up, scrubbed the stove, made dinner, and packed lunch for the next day, like none of it cracked her. But it had. You could feel it in the house, like the tension finally drained from the drywall and floors. Jessica didn't come home. She sent Olivia a short email that said she was swamped with project deadlines and thinking of her. No call, no visit, nothing with a heartbeat. Holden showed up once with a friend from college, walked through the garage, asked, "Is that drill still here?" Then left with a box and no questions. Olivia offered him cookies. He said, "I'm cutting sugar," and walked out. I stayed, because I meant it when I said I would. Olivia was the only person who ever chose me without a PR motive or a deadline attached. I wasn't a checkmark to her. I was her kid, whether the papers said it or not. I picked up a seasonal coordinator job with the County Parks Department, trash patrol, field repairs, helping with public programs. On weekends, I kept showing up at the nature center. Trail maintenance, habitat work, even leading beginner hikes when the regular guy called off. That's where Ainsley came back in, not as a passing name or a maybe someday, but as herself. She was doing environmental education work, part-time staff, part-time county extension, always had dirt on her boots, and a calendar full of grant deadlines. We started meeting for coffee after shifts. Then it was long walks after hours. No big talks at first, just quiet steps and shared space. When she spoke, she meant it. When I spoke, she listened like she wasn't waiting to reply. That kind of calm was new to me. Olivia tried to keep her world spinning. She still went to work at the school front office, still came home and made dinner. But now there was a quiet in her movements that hadn't been there before. Not fear, not panic, just this soft, worn-down kind of stillness. Like part of her had stopped hoping Joseph would ever choose her again, and part of her already knew he never did in the first place. One Thursday evening, maybe 6 weeks after he left, I came home late from trail cleanup and saw a dark SUV parked out front. At first I thought it was Holden, but the shape of the Blazer on the porch made my stomach drop. Joseph. Alone. Standing like he was about to ask for a vote. I didn't rush. Didn't hurry up the driveway. Just walked past him, unlocked the front door, and held it open without a word. He stepped inside like he still lived there, eyes scanning the hallway like he expected dust or disorder. "I just need to grab a few things," he said, casual like he was picking up dry cleaning. "Some documents, a couple old files." I nodded toward the office. "They're where you left them." He walked past me and didn't say thank you. I waited. I knew this wasn't just about a file folder. He came back 5 minutes later, empty-handed. He stood near the entry rug, that same one he yelled about years ago, and looked me straight in the face. "Look," he said, "I've covered a lot of costs over the years. Room, board, medical, schooling. I just need a statement that you received that support, for accounting purposes." "For accounting," I repeated. He shifted, adjusting his sleeve like he was giving a quarterly report. "It helps clean up some loose ends. It's not a big deal. Just need it signed. Closes the loop. Keeps everything aligned if anyone asks questions later." I knew what he meant. It wasn't paperwork. It was reputation. It was Sloan, or whoever else he was trying to look squeaky clean for. It was about making me a footnote instead of a person. I looked him in the eye and said, "No." Not loud, not angry, just flat. Joseph blinked like he didn't understand the word. "It's just a standard statement." "No," I repeated. "You don't get to rewrite the past so it works better for your future." His jaw tightened. I could see the flicker of anger show up behind his eyes, then cool just as fast into that boardroom blankness. "This isn't a threat," he said, like I was being dramatic. "Didn't sound like one," I answered. He stepped back like he was waiting for someone else to smooth things over. But Olivia didn't appear. She'd been standing at the end of the hallway the whole time. Quiet. Still. Watching. When he finally noticed her, he didn't say her name. Didn't look apologetic. Just stared for a second, then turned and walked out the door like the house bored him. He didn't say goodbye. Not to me. Not to her. Olivia's hands were shaking. She stood there, half-shadowed in the hallway light, and stared at the closed door like it might reopen and undo the moment. I walked over and set a hand on the wall near her shoulder. Not a hug. Just enough contact to say, "I'm still here." She nodded, didn't cry, just exhaled like she'd been holding something in for a decade. That was when I knew it for sure. Joseph wasn't just gone. The provider, the decision-maker, the man who used to carry clipboards and rules like weapons, had turned into something else entirely. The abandoner, the kind that doesn't shout when he leaves, just signs a lease, rewrites history, and expects you to say thank you for the damage. It was a Tuesday afternoon, early spring, when Holden knocked on the door like we still had some kind of normal between us. I opened it, and there he was. Same cocky, lean, expensive shoes, but with a new twitch under his left eye and sweat along his hairline. Blair stood next to him, high heels too sharp for the driveway, smile tight like she was trying to win a listing in a neighborhood she didn't respect. "Hey," he said, voice soft and rehearsed. Can we come in for a second?" Olivia wasn't home yet, and I didn't want them inside, but I stepped back. Blair walked in first like it was her place. She gave me a once-over and said, "You look healthy," like it was surprising. Holden did this shaky inhale, then planted himself at the dining table and looked at his hands like he expected them to deliver the speech for him. "I'm just going to say it straight," he started. "Then don't dress it up," I said. He nodded, rubbed his jaw, and leaned forward. "I made some mistakes. Nothing criminal," he rushed to add. "Just things spiraled. I had a business that fell apart, and now there's people involved. Real people." Blair cut in, like she couldn't stand his stalling. "There are debts, short-term loans. It's not good, and we need to act fast." Holden took a breath like he was about to drown. "They're not the kind of people you can just block. I messed up, Neil. I really did." It took all of 5 minutes to get to the real pitch. Blair unfolded a folder, slid it across the table, and tapped a sticky note that read, "Market ready in 2 weeks." She smiled that too white realtor smile. "The house is in a prime area. It'll sell quickly. With the proceeds, we can clear everything. Olivia won't be burdened. She can stay with us, temporarily, of course, until we figure something more comfortable." I looked at Holden. "You want to sell her house?" "I don't want to," he said, real quick, like he could still play the victim. "But I don't have options. I can't protect her if this escalates." That line made me angry in a way I couldn't hide. He was the one dragging threats into our kitchen and acting like he was shielding her. "She's not your shield," I said. Holden dropped his head into his hands and groaned. "You think I like this? You think I want to bring this into her life?" I stayed standing. "I think you want someone to bail you out." Olivia walked in halfway through his next sentence. She looked from face to face, caught the folder on the table, and went still. "What's going on?" Blair turned toward her with that soft tone people use when they're about to ruin your week. "Olivia, honey, we're just walking through some options. Temporary things. Holden's had a rough stretch, and there's a way we can all come out the other side." Olivia blinked hard, once, then again. "What kind of options?" Holden took her hand. "The house. You'd stay with us. We'll get through this together. I just need a little help." She sat down slowly, like her legs didn't trust her anymore. I could see the panic building behind her eyes. "I have some retirement money," she started. "We could look at—" Holden squeezed her hand. "It wouldn't be enough. Not in time." He let that last part hang there like a threat, but without saying the word. Not in time. Not safe. Not a joke. I stepped in before it got worse. "There's another option," I said. "Cut him off. Get him help, real help. We call a financial counselor. We talk to an attorney. You don't have to give up your home for his mistakes." Holden stood up fast. "You think this is easy for me?" I stared him down. "I think you don't like hearing no." Blair moved closer to Olivia, already softening her voice again. "We're just trying to keep things calm. The house is a tool, that's all. It can protect all of us." Olivia looked up at me with those wet, wide eyes I remembered from the funeral. "Can we do this for family?" That question, so quiet, so loaded, cut me in half. I said yes. I said yes because I couldn't stand the idea of her looking over her shoulder. because fear had already carved too many corners in her life, because she asked like it was life or death. And the second I said it, I regretted giving Holden that inch. Blair handled the listing. She never said I was out of the loop, but every time I asked about paperwork or numbers, she changed the subject. "It's all standard," she'd say, flipping to a colorful brochure. "We'll walk Olivia through it." Holden stopped pretending after that. He'd show up with coffee, charm Olivia, then pull me aside and say things like, "This is stressful for everyone, so let's just not add to it." One afternoon, he slid a set of papers across the table. "Need a quick signature just for timing. Won't stick, just helps us get things rolling." I didn't even look at it. "Not signing anything. You know that." He smiled too fast. "No problem. We'll handle it." The house sold in 6 weeks. Final price came in just under $412,000. And somehow, every time I asked where the money was going, the numbers changed. "Interest penalties," Holden said. "Broker fees," Blair added. "You wouldn't understand." What I understood was Olivia packing 2 suitcases and walking out of her own front door like she was trespassing on someone else's life. She turned to look at the porch one last time, smiled through tears, said something about how clean the air smelled. Then she got in Blair's SUV and left. I stood in the driveway as the taillights disappeared down the road, knowing I had said yes to the wrong thing, and that Holden had gotten exactly what he came for. Not just the house. Control. The first few weeks after Olivia moved in with Holden and Blair, I tried to believe it could work. I visited twice a week, brought her books, her favorite tea, helped repot a little plant she'd saved from the old porch. Blair opened the door with a smile too smooth, too bright, like I was interrupting a showing. She offered me water in stemless glasses and wiped counters that weren't dirty while I talked to Olivia. Olivia seemed smaller, quieter. But she smiled when I showed up, laughed when I reminded her of old stories, and always walked me to the door like she didn't want the visit to end. Then one day Blair said, "It's not a good time." She didn't offer a reason. The next time it was, "She's resting." Then, "We're out." After 4 weeks of runaround, I stopped pretending it was random. Calls stopped going through. I'd ring Olivia's number and get a generic voicemail that said the line was no longer in service. When I asked Holden, he shrugged like he was giving a weather report. "Oh yeah, we switched carriers, streamlined the plan." I mailed her a letter, then another. A week later, 2 of them came back with yellow stickers slapped across the envelopes. No such recipient at this address. It was the same address I'd visited, same unit number. But now it was like she'd been deleted. Jessica never showed up. She sent one message, an email with no punctuation that read, "Hope you're well, tell Holden hi if you see him." It felt like she typed it while waiting for a latte. I kept my head down at work, still pulling shifts with the Parks Department, still trying to land a full-time post. But every night I stared at my phone like it owed me a sign. Just one ring, one message, anything. Nicole called one evening. Her voice had that forced brightness she used when she was uncomfortable. "I haven't heard from Olivia," she said. "You?" "Not for a while," I told her. She paused. "That doesn't sit right." I could hear paper shuffling on her end, like she was already hunting for numbers. "I'll ask around," she said, and hung up before I could say more. Ainsley didn't try to talk me down. She watched me line up phone records and returned mail like we were building a case file. Then she helped. Post-its, calendars, names, and any detail that made a pattern start to form. "I've seen this before," she said. "Not this exact shape, but close enough. Let's map it." She was calm, steady, like she was holding the rope while I climbed. And then came the box. Blair dropped it off like it was trash. Said it was just a few extra things of Olivia's, and that they didn't fit in the condo. No eye contact. No thank you. Just a plastic tote set on my porch with a sticky note that said MISC. Inside was a mix of old scarves, expired makeup, a half-used check register, and a shoebox of paperwork. Some folded, some crumpled, some shoved in envelopes with the flaps torn. That shoebox cracked everything open. First thing I found was a set of documents from the house sale. Full closing packet, but with signature pages pulled out and replaced. I knew Olivia's handwriting. These weren't it. Then came the durable financial power of attorney, dated 2 weeks after she moved willingly, executed in her name, but the scrawl didn't match any version of her signature I'd seen over the years. It looked like someone trying to copy it off an old check. Ainsley sat with me while I flipped through it. "This doesn't smell right," she said. "Look at the witness initials." Then came the notary stamp, from a strip mall postal shop in a plaza off the highway. We looked it up. One of those shipping and ink pads places that handles walk-ins. The date on the notarization? A Thursday. Olivia worked Thursdays at the front desk of the middle school. She didn't get off early. I knew her schedule. I pulled up the school payroll system from her old employee records. We still had her login saved. That Thursday, she clocked out at 4:26 p.m. The notary's logbook, which Ainsley requested through a polite but persistent email chain, showed Olivia's POA document stamped at 2:45 p.m. That was across town. Olivia wasn't there. I stopped breathing for a second, sitting at that kitchen table. "Someone forged this," I said. "Someone got a notary to sign off when she wasn't even present." Ainsley nodded, jaw clenched. It didn't stop there. A healthcare proxy sat in the same folder, same week, same notary, naming Holden as medical agent. Again, not her writing. I sat back in the chair, felt the weight of it all pressed down like someone had laid a stone on my chest. This wasn't family drama anymore. It wasn't just a bad decision or a rushed move. It was a setup, a layered, deliberate quieting. I called Holden the next day. "I want to talk to Olivia," I said. "She's been tired lately," he said, all smiles. "New place has thrown off her rhythm." "I'll come by." "Not a good time," he replied. "She's adjusting." I didn't hang up. I let the silence stretch until he filled it. "You're making this tense for no reason," he added. "We're doing our best." "You sure you want to use the word we right now?" I asked. He didn't answer. That's when I stopped asking. I was done being polite. Done waiting for a door to open that was never meant to open again. Somebody had erased her. Carefully, legally, quietly, but not completely. And now I was going to find her. I went straight to the condo. Blair didn't open the door. She spoke through it like I was some random guy trying to sell gutter repair. "She's not here, Neil. Please don't make this uncomfortable." "I'm not leaving without answers," I said. "So you can either open up or call the cops and explain why a son is asking where his mother is." A pause. Then, "She's safe. You need to let go." I stood there long enough for neighbors to start peeking through their blinds, then walked away without saying another word. 10 minutes later, Holden called me. "She's in assisted living," he said, like it was no big deal. "For her health, she's better off. You didn't tell anyone, not even Nicole." "We didn't want drama." I could hear the shrug in his voice. "You're being dramatic now," he added. "This is why we didn't loop you in." He hung up before I could answer. Ainsley didn't flinch. She pulled her laptop closer, cracked her knuckles, and said, "Let's find her." She knew how to talk to people who didn't want to talk. Through county extension contacts and a quiet call to the Adult Services hotline, she found the place in under 2 hours. It was 40 minutes out, tucked off a road with no sidewalk, and a brick sign that read, "Morning Hill Wellness Community," in fake cursive. We drove out the next morning. Gray skies, empty trees, the kind of cold that gets under your coat. The facility had cheerful paint on the walls and a front desk worker who smiled too hard. They called it the Wellness Wing. I called it something else. The smell hit first. Cleaning chemicals, cafeteria food, something too sweet under it all. We gave my name and asked to see Olivia. The front desk hesitated. I handed over the old power of attorney document and said, "Check the date." They didn't argue after that. When we stepped into her room, I barely recognized her. She was thinner, hair dull and pulled back in a loose braid. Her eyes had the same color but none of the light. She was sitting in a hard chair near the window, folding and unfolding a tissue like that was her job now. She looked up when she heard my name. Neil? Her voice was dry, like she hadn't used it much. I stepped forward. Hey, Liv. Her face tried to smile, but it only got halfway there. I hugged her carefully, too gently probably, but she didn't pull away. She kept glancing at the door like someone might rush in and end the moment. I didn't know how to reach you, she whispered. My phone got lost. I thought you were busy. That sentence punched me straight in the chest. Holden said you were busy, and the mail. I think it got mixed up. Things don't come here right. I crouched down. They lied to you, Liv. She blinked fast, lips pressed together. You didn't ask to come here, did you? She hesitated, then shook her head. They said it was temporary, that I'd be safer here. But I never signed anything important. I swear, Neil, I didn't. Ainsley was standing by the counter, scanning the intake form posted on the clipboard. She cleared her throat. You're not going to like this, she said quietly. Professional contact listed here. Sloan Mercer. I looked up. Joseph Sloan? Same name, same spelling. She's on a corporate volunteer board that partners with this facility chain. It wasn't proof, but it was a fingerprint. That was when it all clicked. Joseph didn't need to show up. His network did the work for him. Reputation stayed clean while his past got quietly locked away. I filed the paperwork the same afternoon. I'm not a lawyer, but I learned fast when someone you love is being managed like inventory. I petitioned for adult guardianship and conservatorship, filed a report with Adult Protective Services. I brought the forged documents and the notary log and the mail that got returned like Olivia had vanished. Ainsley helped me prep every line. Nicole signed a sworn statement. I found an elder law attorney who took the case after a 30-minute call and a scan of the notary's discrepancies. The court moved fast. Emergency temporary guardianship was granted within a week. The day we picked Olivia up, she stood by the door with her coat already on, clutching a bag that looked like it had been packed for months. Her hands shook. Her lips trembled, but no sound came. You're coming with me, I said. I've got the paperwork. She didn't ask to see it. She just nodded. The staff didn't argue. They handed over her medication list and some folded discharge papers and looked everywhere but at our eyes. When we got outside, Olivia looked up at the sky like she forgot it was there. She didn't cry in the car, not loudly. But I saw her reflection in the window, tears sliding down her cheeks without a sound, like even her joy had learned to hide. I reached over and touched her hand. You're home now. She squeezed back, eyes still on the road ahead. Getting Olivia out was the start, not the end. The investigation moved slow. No dramatic moment, no single call that fixed it. It was real life, paperwork, follow-ups, phone trees, people covering their own backs. Staff at the facility didn't want trouble. They used words like miscommunication and unverified consent. Holden acted shocked that anyone would even question him. It was all done properly, he told the social worker on record. She wanted to be there. Neil's just emotional. Nicole came through with a twist I didn't see coming. She'd saved a stack of letters from Olivia, still sealed, still stamped, still marked with my name in her careful handwriting. Blair had helpfully offered to handle outgoing mail, told Nicole she'd drop it all in the box. But she never did. Those envelopes were the proof. Proof that contact wasn't lost. It was blocked. Blair's part didn't stop there. The notary log from the condo sale had a signature that didn't match Olivia's at all, and it happened on a day Olivia's work badge had her clocked in from morning to late afternoon. The notary's own logbook said the signer was Olivia Watson, but she wasn't there. Holden's betting addiction got exposed in the financial audit. It started with inconsistencies in the house sale numbers, then led to withdrawals from shared accounts, cash transfers to third-party apps, and payments labeled things like consulting and risk fees. It wasn't just debt. It was gambling, late-night bets, and IOUs to the kind of people who don't send polite reminders. Even Jessica couldn't spin that one. She didn't reach out until it hit the review board at the bank where she did freelance design work. She didn't call to apologize. She texted, "You need to stop ruining the family. Does Olivia have anything set aside? My studio lease is up soon." That message made my stomach drop. Joseph never showed his face again. I heard through Nicole that he'd been telling people Olivia was mentally declining and that I was stirring drama for attention. He couldn't stand the idea that his name might be pulled into anything messy. Sloan, for her part, stayed quiet, but one of Ainsley's county contacts mentioned that she'd reached out to the facility after Olivia left, asking about protocol, like Olivia was a misplaced file in a cabinet. Then came Holden's final move. A go-between called, a friend of a friend, and floated a cleanup offer. If Neil signs a release, the guy said, ratifying the house sale, the POA, and all past support received, Holden's willing to let this go. Quietly. That was it. The offer told me everything. Holden wasn't sorry. He was scared. I didn't yell. I didn't lawyer up and slap lawsuits around just to make a point. I just turned over everything I had, every forged doc, every notary log, every copy of the returned mail, and let the process land where it landed, and it landed hard. Blair's license as a realtor went under review for irregular document handling and client misrepresentation. A complaint was filed by the local ethics board. No one said if she lost her license officially, but her name vanished from the listings I checked a month later. Holden filed for bankruptcy, said it was cleaning house. What he meant was, his options were finally running out. Jessica went quiet. Joseph stayed in the wind. Olivia didn't celebrate. She just sat on the back steps of our rental one morning, wrapped in a cardigan, sipping tea she didn't finish. "They thought I was easy to remove," she said, voice soft but steady. "They were wrong," I answered. Not long after that, I saw a job posting from a wildlife area 2 counties over. Live-in caretaker, trail coordinator, housing included. It was like someone had printed my escape route and hung it on the bulletin board just for me. I applied the next morning and got it a week later. Ainsley helped me pack, helped me move Olivia's things. She didn't treat it like charity. She didn't act like she was stuck to my life. She just showed up, sat on the floor with a box of books and said, "We can build something better." And we did. I got Olivia settled into the new place. Real meals, fresh air, walks at her pace. I gave her keys and said the door would stay unlocked for her, always. And every time I looked at her across the room, safe and still standing, I thought, this is what it looks like when the cycle breaks. The house that came with the caretaker job was plain, low roof, worn floors, windows that stuck when it rained, but it sat on the edge of a stretch of protected land that went quiet by 8 p.m. most nights. You could hear birds in the morning, and nothing but wind at night. For someone who grew up listening through walls, that kind of quiet felt like safety. I built the ramp myself. Took me 2 weekends, 4 blisters, and more lumber than I expected. Olivia stood at the door the morning I finished it, ran her hand over the rail and said, "It's solid." That was the biggest compliment I ever got from her about anything I made with my hands. She improved slowly, less flinching, more full sentences, longer walks each day. The first time she made her own lunch without asking where the bread was, I nearly cried. The second time, she made mine too. Ainsley helped me set up the side project, a wildlife rehab partnership for injured animals and dumped dogs. No hero speeches, no rescue selfies, just steady work and strict rules. The first dog we logged was a beagle mix, nervous and quiet. Same kind I used to feed behind the grocery store when I was a kid. It felt like something quiet finally lining up. The justice never came like I pictured it would. No handcuffs, no headlines. Just Holden signing off on bankruptcy paperwork. Blair stumbling through a disciplinary review she couldn't charm her way out of. Jessica stopped answering texts when it became clear no one was funding her creative pivot. Joseph didn't apologize. Sloan didn't either. What I got from that corner of the world was silence. And honestly, I learned to see silence as a gift, especially from people who only speak when they're about to take something from you. Olivia still asked about them, now and then. "Have you heard anything from Jessica?" she'd say, casual, folding laundry like it was just conversation. I'd answer her honest, but not bitter. They made choices, Liv. We can't live their life for them. She never pushed after that. I built her a small cabin in the back part of the lot. Just one bedroom, wide windows, and a little heater she didn't like to turn on unless it was freezing. She liked that space. Said it helped her think. It gave her distance without being alone, and for the first time in years, she had privacy without fear. Ainsley and I didn't call it dating at first. It just became obvious we were doing life together. She kept her independence. I learned not to mistake love for performance. She didn't want to be rescued, and I didn't need saving. That balance, that quiet steadiness, was the closest thing to peace I'd ever had. Nicole came once that first year, walked slow with a cane, brought cookies she admitted she didn't bake. When she saw Olivia sitting on the porch with a sweater and a tea mug, she started crying and didn't stop until she was seated beside her. "I thought I was doing the right thing back then," Nicole said. "Pushing for adoption, pressuring Joseph. I thought that was how family proved itself." Olivia didn't say much, just rested her hand on Nicole's knee and nodded. Nicole wiped her eyes and said, "Now I know. Doing right also means staying involved." Even now, years later, I'll catch Olivia standing by her cabin window around dusk, looking down the gravel drive like she's waiting for a car. She doesn't ask out loud anymore. She knows no one's coming. But I don't shame her for it. We all carry hope in different shapes. I'm 57 now. Got scars that don't show and memories I've stopped trying to explain. But if you're listening, if you're wondering what kind of family you'll get, just remember this. Blood can start a story, but choice is what makes a family stay. One more thing before you scroll. Do you think Holden and Blair planned everything, or were they just grabbing power as they went? If this story stirred something real in you, please tap the hype button so it reaches more people who need to hear it. And if you haven't yet, hit subscribe and give this video a like. It means a lot and takes just a second. Drop a comment too, even if it's just good story or what part hit you hardest. Thanks for being here.